Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Strength for Your Purpose podcast. I am your host, as always, Dr. Phil Finemore, owner of WorkFitME Mobile Concierge Physical Therapy. The goal of this podcast is to help busy Maine professionals find and achieve the mental, emotional, and physical strength necessary for them to fulfill their true purpose in life. I have a passion for sharing my true purpose with others. Join me as I discuss holistic health and wellness tips with my friends, colleagues, and even heroes and mentors to help you strengthen your true purpose in life. And we have a super special Olympics edition of the Strength for Your Purpose podcast tonight. And I am joined by my good friend, my fraternity brother, Chris Stevenson. Chris, what's up, man?
Oh, hey, Phil. Thanks for having me. Excited
Yeah.
to be here.
Yeah. So we were just to give you a little more background on my friend Chris here for everybody listening. Chris works for Edward Jones Investments, and I like to tell people he deals in goals and dreams because that's what he's helped me do with some of my with some of my planning that he's helped me with. But brought him on tonight because we were chatting a little bit about some of the Olympic stuff recently and some of the stuff that's been going on with Simone Biles and talking about mindset and self-talk and things like that. And on top of being a financial advisor and representative with Edward Jones, Chris has also ran a total of 6 marathons, including 3 Boston marathons, and an Ironman was included in that. Had a top 10 finish in his age group, by the way, at the Lake Placid Ironman in 2014. Look it up. Everybody look it up. It was really impressive. And he's running the Chicago Marathon coming up this year, which will be his 7th. So, yeah, Chris, thanks for coming on. And I think this is a cool topic to chat about because I think we can all, whether we're in business, whether we're looking to start a new journey, whether it's a new business or a fitness journey, or heck, even with some of the stuff that you do with people when they're trying to figure out what the rest of their life is going to look like, maybe from a financial perspective, mindset and how we talk to ourselves in our own voice and in our own head is pretty important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even when you're talking about, it's all about behavior, right? With some of your clients too, it's,
Yeah.
How do we get in the habits? How do we have the right mindset? And how do we get in the right behaviors? So for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, we both happened to be texting each other while we were watching the Olympics the other night, and all this stuff was coming out about Simone Biles having to drop out of the team competition for her mental health. And I think as of the time that we've recorded this podcast, there's only like one other event she's officially missed, and she has a few days before she decides on the rest of the events that she's qualified for. And it's kind of one of those things where when you first hear it, it kind of takes you back a little bit. You're like, wow, this person that over the last month has been called nothing but the GOAT, right? Like the greatest of all time in her sport. She's changed the sport. She's doing maneuvers that no one else in the world can do, but she feels that she's in a place right now where she can't mentally and physically compete without potentially hurting herself physically or affecting her teammates. And I immediately was thinking we can all learn so much from this, can't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And she even stated too, she felt like a couple weeks ago, she literally had the weight of the world on her shoulders. And quite frankly, she did, and she does.
Yeah.
Being the GOAT, there's so much pressure on you. We think that, there's pressure to go to the gym in the morning.
Right.
I can't even imagine what she's going through.
No, for sure. It truly is the weight of the world too, because even in the sports that none of us are familiar with, we're all still disappointed when the US doesn't do well. Right? Like when this every 4 years, well, every 2 years if you count the Winter Olympics too, but the sports that people only care about every 2 to 4 years, we're like, why isn't the US at least on the podium for this thing? What the heck? It's a very something that we all get really, really passionate about. So it truly is the weight of the world because we all put the US on this pedestal, but especially in certain sports like gymnastics, specifically on the women's side, they really are the best in the world. And she is too. So I was thinking about this in relation to other GOATs in sports, like the Michael Jordans and Tom Brady's, you know, uh, those, those guys are able to go out, Tom Brady anywhere from 17 to 20 times a year, depending on if he is playing in a Super Bowl, which he usually is, or not. and they get to prove it a little more often, right? Like they get to ride those ups and downs a little bit more, and they've got another opportunity coming 7 days away to prove it. And in the case of basketball, like Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, those guys got to prove it a few times a week, right? But she really only gets to prove it on a world stage once every 4 years, right? So the the pressure of that can certainly wear on a person, and that's when the mindset and how we talk to ourselves about our performance, what we're trying to do, what we're capable of, gets amplified to the nth degree.
Yeah, absolutely. And one small miss, I mean, like what happened to Simone on the vault, one small tweak, that just totally messed with her mind and messed with her headspace, where she kind of had to rethink everything.
Right. Exactly. And I think to kind of equate this back to more of a normal situation, none of us are ever going to know what it feels like to truly have the world on your shoulders, like Simone said in that interview. But if you're starting a new weight loss journey to lose 100 pounds in the next 12 to 18 months, if you're starting a new business, if you just decided to take the leap and start a new job when you've been comfortable in the job you've had for a long time, whatever the new thing might be to you, you might feel like you've got your whole world on your shoulders, right? Your ability to provide for your family, your ability to be the best version of yourself, for your future self, for your future family, all this stuff. It might not be the entire world, but the weight of that can feel pretty heavy. And the way we talk to ourselves about that, and the mindset in which we put ourselves in going into and going through that situation, has a huge impact on the outcome and whether we even get off the ground or not.
Yeah, absolutely. I always equate it to, whatever plan that you have. I mean, we all have dreams, whether it's to run a marathon, to save for retirement and to live through retirement, or like you said, recover from an injury or start a new business. How can we kind of develop a plan and develop a good foundation so we can get started on that?
Right. Yeah. And I always, whenever I hear that saying, I always go back to another saying that you hear a lot in the boxing and MMA world. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, right? and that could be a physical punch, it could be a psychological punch, whatever the case might be. And having the plan, but knowing why you started in the first place, and having good goals that are set up to get you to your ultimate end goal and your ultimate dream. Make sure that when your plan does get pushed off course, that you have kind of the fortitude to get back on a little bit, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it always comes back to your why and really why you're doing it. I mean, I got into the financial planning world because, I came home when I was a young adult, I should say, with my mom crying, looking at her bills because she couldn't afford, to pay her bills. But yeah,
Yeah.
she had a great job. We had a great house to live in. And, I would never want to put myself nor have my kids be in that situation as well. At the same time, a why for a marathon is, why do you want to do it 7 times? That's pretty psycho, but
You're insane. Yes.
but basically, I mean, it's a passion. And also my why is, because my father passed away from liver cancer, and, I run marathons and I have fun with that because I do it for those who can't run marathons, and I do it for my dad. So
yeah,
I feel like that's a huge driver. Whenever you're, like you said, you get punched in the face or you get derailed, you think back to your why, and you can easily just put one foot in front of the other.
100%. Yeah. And man, those are really powerful. Thank you for sharing those. Cause that's, I think those couple things right there are something that a lot of people can relate to. And when your why is that strong and powerful, and I hope everyone listening just felt the emotional and mental pull that I just felt listening to that. Because when it's more than just, I want to make a lot of money, when it's more than just, I want to look good in my bathing suit this summer, when there's something more substantial to it, and it goes deeper than sort of face value, so to speak, you're going to be that much more likely to finish what you started. and overcome some of those obstacles. And as I'm saying this, I guess we should sort of take a step back and say that I don't think either of us believe that Simone Biles didn't have a strong enough why. She has she has an incredibly strong why. She's defending Olympic champion. She's got more medals than anyone else that's ever stepped foot in the gymnastics arena at that level. But it's a good lesson that when we do hit a bump in the road, making sure that we do take care of ourselves, but still keep going forward and support those around us. If we're in a team environment, or figure out what we need to do to support ourselves to keep going is incredibly important.
100%. Yeah. She does have the weight of the world on her shoulders. And I think her mindset put her in the right place, because I mean, think about all the people who are inspired to be her. And for her, she could have easily tried and gotten totally injured, and just she would have been retired by that point.
Right.
But to have that capability and that mindset to step back and take a pause, you know, I think she's going to be coming back even more stronger than we've seen her in the past. So.
Oh, for sure. And it might even be that, again, as we're recording this, we don't really know what the outcome is going to be through the weekend, kind of like the halfway point of the Olympics when they do their next events, but could even be sooner than we think. Could be within this Olympics and some of those individual events. And she was putting even more pressure on herself, because it was the team portion that the two events she backed out of were both team portions, not individual portions. So we could see it sooner than 4 years from now. But I think you're right. And speaking of sort of the team portion of that, another lesson that all of us can take from this is the mental fortitude that her teammate showed to still place in the silver medal spot in that team event, when their team captain, the best to ever do it, says, I can't do this. And someone who was not warmed up, sitting in their basically warm up street clothes over on the sidelines, has to jump in and perform as a member of a defending gold medal team, and they still get on the podium. That frame of mind that those other girls must have been in that situation, they just got the weight of the world passed over to them, because now everyone's going, hey, are these other girls on this team going to be able to even podium at this point without Simone Biles? And they got a silver medal at the Olympics. It's the mental strength there is unfathomable to me.
Absolutely. I was just going to say, I mean, teamwork would be key in anything that you're doing. So even just having a battle buddy for whatever you're doing. But I mean, imagine just being on the U.S. Olympic team. I can't even imagine what their mindset workouts look like. I'd love to dig into that a little bit more, because you're absolutely right. I mean, to go from kind of being on the bench to being like, nope, ready, let's go. We're going to make this happen. And then boom, silver medal.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Oh my gosh, it's incredible. And I was talking about this to with some clients today, because obviously this has been a pretty big topic of conversation out there in the world. And when you look at Olympic gymnasts, the difference in athletic ability, like sheer ability to compete on the world stage as a gymnast, that sheer athletic ability that Simone Biles has versus the first person that didn't make the Olympics, right? It is probably, I don't know, let's put a number on it, somewhere around like a 20% difference, right? It's a pretty small margin physically. It probably really is, because if you're even competing to go to the Olympics, you are in that top upper echelon of athletes in the entire world, which is a very small number. But when we look at what's going on between the ears, that gap between what Simone Biles has been able to do over her entire career and what that person that just missed is able to do is more like an 80% difference. Wow. Right. I mean, I'm kind of making some of these numbers up, but I'm just trying to illustrate that the gap is a lot bigger on the mental side of things than on the physical side of things. Same thing when if we go back to the other part of this conversation, like Tom Brady, Michael Jordan, a lot of football players and basketball players that play with those guys have the physical some of them are a lot more athletic than Tom Brady. I mean, there are guys out there that are way more athletic than Tom Brady, but the drive, that the competitive drive that Simone Biles, Tom Brady, and Michael Jordan have, and what's going on between their ears is way beyond everybody else they've ever competed against. And knowing that when your headspace isn't right and that you have to step away and fix that in order to not hurt yourself, not hurt your teammates, not hurt those people around you, and then still work back toward achieving your ultimate goals. It takes just as much mental strength, I think, as it does for those girls who had to come off the bench and come in and still compete at the highest level possible.
Definitely agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah. So with all that said, we definitely know that mindset is incredibly important. The way we talk to ourselves about our own abilities to be able to achieve those goals that we set out. Am I worthy? Can I actually do this? All those things we need to work on. Those things are definitely a practice. So as a marathon runner, who I'm sure there are a lot of thoughts that go through your mind in those 26.2 miles that are somewhat doubtful from time to time, but also in working with your clients, how do you address some of those things when you hear some of that negative self-talk, either from your clients or even from yourself when you're training, when you're actually running the marathon, when you're training for a triathlon, when you're doing one? How do you deal with some of that stuff?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And I think, it's individual to us all, because we're all running our own race.
Mm.
So, it's really just about, can you acknowledge that you're having these self doubts and these thoughts? And it's really about, okay, acknowledge the fact that that's happening. And then what are you going to do to change it? How can you do it? How can you pivot, essentially?
Mm.
For me, when I'm running and I just don't want to run anymore, you're at mile 17, 18, you're hitting a wall. And then you kind of think about big picture, it's hard to take the next step, but big picture, you've only got a couple more miles left. You just ran 17, 18 miles.
Right.
You could walk it and you could finish it. So it's really just about, okay, one step in front of the other. For me personally, a mantra would be good too, having something a little bit more positive outlooking, stronger with every step. And setting up the behaviors too. So when you're talking about working with clients that talking about their finances, I feel like almost everybody in this world knows somebody who said that, money's the root of all evil. And you and I both know it can work for you or it can work against you. And a lot of the folks that have the negative thoughts about money, it's typically working against them. And that's why. So.
Right. Yeah. No, that's incredible. I think that's really important. What you just said is and it definitely takes some work, right? But if you make more of that positive mindset and some positive affirmation more of a practice that you're working on a daily basis, and when you catch yourself doing some of that negative self-talk, kind of recognizing that and being like, hey, wait a second, let's take a step back and actually look at where I started, where I'm at now, and how much closer I am do I want to be than I was when I started, and allow that to help you flip the switch. Because in that moment when you're saying, man, I'm not sure I can do this, why do I keep hitting this wall? It's very hard to just flip the switch right in that moment and say, no, I can do this, and here's why. But if you can take a step back, realize that you're dealing with that frustration, that you're having that negative self-talk, and you can turn that around and use it as reflection to help break out the yardstick, so to speak, and sort of measure how much improvement you've made, and that you're way closer to where you want to be than you were when you started however long ago. That can help start churning the wheels a little bit more in that positive direction. But it's definitely a practice. It's not something that you can just do like that. It's something that you have to work towards, and you have to want to work towards it, right?
Absolutely. I feel like everything, everybody in this world wants instant gratification. And I relate, and you say it all the time too, compound interest, it takes very, very small steps to get to a big outcome.
Yeah.
Whether that's healing an injury, I know it sucks to do it, but you have to do it, and you have to take baby steps with it, because you're absolutely right. I've been there before, and you've helped me with that. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. No problem, man. Yeah, no, you're right. The one step at a time, taking it in smaller chunks and not overwhelming yourself with just wanting to be at the end, which is super hard to do, but it works, and it's really powerful when we can approach anything we're trying to work through or strive for in life. So yeah, that's great. We've talked a lot about that on this podcast. There was an episode called The Power of the Pivot. I definitely encourage you all to go back and check that out if you haven't listened to it. We kind of chatted about a few of those things, and a lot of this stuff we chatted about with another professional athlete we've had on the podcast, Jessie Flex Lebrecht of American Ninja Warrior. Her episode was like an episode or two before that Power of the Pivot episode. Those have been some common themes here on the Strength for Your Purpose podcast. So if this is your first time listening and it's kind of resonating with you a little bit, go back and check out some of those past episodes, because they go on a even deeper dive than this into a few more specific areas than what we're talking about tonight. So Chris, if people have been listening to this and kind of like what they're hearing from you about what you do, more from the financial investment side, but heck, I know you're willing to give out some marathon advice to people too if they reach out to you. So how can people reach out and learn a little bit more about what you do if they want to chat with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate it. So Chris Stevenson, I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn. So feel free to reach out to me. I'll be responsive and help out as best as I can. So it doesn't matter what your situation is. You know, I have a ton of mentors that have helped me, and if they didn't give me sage advice, then, you know, I need to give back. So I appreciate being on the podcast, and hopefully I can help somebody. If I can help one person a day, then I feel like I've done my job.
Awesome. Well, thanks. I appreciate that. And before we fully wrap it up, I just have two more questions for you, because I asked this of all guests. I didn't tell you about this before we started, and that there's a reason for that. So thanks for bearing with me. And again, thanks for joining me. But the first question is, what is your definition of strength?
Man, I feel like my definition of strength today is going to be different than my definition of strength tomorrow.
Yeah.
But strength could mean a whole slew of different things, whether it's, you know, mindset, like we're talking about, having the strength to say, hey, I need to pause, having the strength to run a marathon, or, you know, having the strength to have a hard conversation with a loved one. I feel like it's a very broad definition in my mind.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. That's why we hit on mental, emotional, and physical strength on this podcast, because you really can't have one without the other. So that's very true. And lastly, what is your true purpose in life, Chris?
I love this question. And again, I think, you know, if you look at it over the next couple of decades, I'm sure it's going to change for everybody. But, you know, my true purpose is, you know, I feel like financial planning is something that, and talking about finances is something that we never really talk about. It's kind of hush hush in a lot of families. We don't talk about our income. We don't talk about saving for retirement. And I had always been fascinated with it. And my grandfather and I always talked about finances and taxes and all this other fun stuff. I'm definitely deeply a nerd, if you could tell. So I love kind of getting into nerd details, but I think just having the conversations, and, you know, my purpose in life is to kind of bring it to fruition as far as, you know, what is finances? How can we teach better behaviors in finance and get us to the dreams that we want? So like we said, take one step at a time to get to the dreams that we want to, but in order to do that, we need to change our behaviors first step.
Yeah. Awesome. I love that. Yeah. Normalize talking about those things and actually preparing for your future, because if you wait too long, it's never too late, right? It's never too late, but it can be a lot easier if you feel a little more comfortable with it sooner. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like, you know, what you're doing with your clients and helping them recover. You know, they could wait forever for a nagging injury just to go away, but the sooner they reach out to you, the better.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's never too late, but the sooner the better, for sure. Awesome. Well, Chris, thanks again, man. I really appreciate it. Chris Stevenson from Edward Jones Investments, really, really good friend of mine, fraternity brother. Really appreciate you joining me, man. And it was a great conversation. So thank you.
Thanks for having me, Phil.
Awesome. Well, all of you out there listening, if you enjoyed this and found value in it, please be a friend and tell a friend who might also find value in it. Always appreciate those 5-star rate and reviews on your favorite podcast platform, whether it be Apple Podcast or Spotify. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button on the video. Make sure you turn the notification on as well so that you know when new episodes of the podcast drop. And until next time, have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everybody.